Perfect. I see the speakers are already on stage, so fantastic. If I can ask the regie
There will be
to launch the next panel, would be great.
on for as long as you like with the answers and explain what you're looking for, what are the long-term strategies, and so on.
If we don't say everything we want to
Yeah,
say.
exactly. And growth investment has to be mentioned at least 10 times. So for the future in effect, you know, that's what we're going to do in the next decade. These are the slides.
Fantastic. I see everyone is on stage. Welcome, welcome everyone for the next session. Cassini Investment Facility from SMEs to mid-cap. And I see also the two moderators are here, Gianluigi Baldesi, Head of the Venture and Finances Office at ESA, and also Tomas Jonsson, Cassini Team Leader, DG DEFIS, European Commission. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for this, and I'm really happy to have the panelists here. Gianluigi Baldesi at the ESA Commercialization Department, and we are working closely together. So we'd like to say a few words about this first. So you can see that we've created a joint slide background here to showcase that EUSPA, the European Union Space Program Agency, the European Space Agency, and the Commission will do our best to provide a great support system for all the space companies in Europe to be able to grow in the future. And one of the things that we are kicking off right now will be a joint investor network. Instead of running a Cassini investor network and an ESA investor network, we'll do this together. So it's going to look something like this. We join forces, create interesting content for the investors. We try to link up investors that have not yet shown an interest in space investments, and we will see what happens. So far, we have interacted with hundreds of investors, so it will be already from day one a pretty strong network.
Thomas, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me also introduce Reinhard Blasi, that is over there, that is moderating also the next session, because we do this really as a three-party activity. And maybe if you can go on the next slide to give really what is this network and what we're going to do. It's clear that we try really to join forces, what we can do. And for me, the important point is to try to simplify the journey from the company looking for fundraising, and not only, is basically to share investment opportunity with this selector network of investors, not early stage, as you will discuss in this panel, but also late stage. This is also very important, and even more and more banks that are offering also loans to companies. So it's not only equity, but also debt. And what we can put as a service is really our technical and market know-how to share to the investors, and in some cases also to the company to try to have more target matchmaking with investors.
Right, so for 2026, we have an excellent calendar of matchmaking events. We will have almost 20 matchmaking events, both in Europe and internationally, run by Cassini and ESA. So you can go to our homepage and check out and register for the matchmaking events you're interested in, and the list is right here. Now, we're going to introduce the panelists. We have a fantastic panel here, so I will begin with Nicolas de la Valleé Poussin at the European Investment Fund. And secondly, we have Fani Kallianou. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Fani Kallianou de Jong.
Yeah, Fani Kallianou
missing part.
de Jong. My apologies. At the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. And we have Estelle Godard, who works at OTB Ventures, one of the leading venture capital funds, which is based in Poland, but present all over Europe, right? So we would like to shed some light on how we will help investment become more present and more active in Europe. Because as you have heard many, many times before. We have less investment capital perhaps than in the United States, for example. On the other hand, we're rather good at investing and getting good returns when we do actually invest. So this is what we're building on. Shall we address, the European investment fund's role in this? So at this point, EIF has signed 19 venture capital funds with European owners, and we have used capital from CASSINI, InvestEU, and the EIF to channel this. And what is the objective of providing public capital to private funds? Can we dig a little bit deeper into that, Nicolas?
Sure. So the European Investment Fund runs two product lines, one of which is equity investments, so fund-of-fund investments. We use public money or money that is guaranteed by the public to close the financing gap for SMEs by investing in private equity, venture capital, private debt, and infrastructure funds. And the current program under the current European budget is called InvestEU. Under InvestEU, we have a large amount of money for these kinds of funds, but it was topped up by an additional amount from CASSINI, which means that we have a very large portfolio, a very large pocket of money dedicated to space in this current financing period, which ends at the end of 2027. That amount is in excess of 600 million. That amount has to be invested in funds as a fund of fund, as a limited partner. And we select funds based on how close they are to market best practice, how experienced their teams are, and obviously with eligibility criteria focused on do they invest in the sectors that we want. So our objective is to close the financing gap by creating additional capital, but it's a delegated model. We invest in competent funds. We're very good at assessing whether they're competent or not. That's really our expertise. But our expertise is not choosing which companies need to be invested in, so we delegate that decision to the funds that we invest in. And we've supported a large number of funds, 19 under the space top-up, one of which we're proud to say is OTB Ventures.
Yeah, so this year, we've seen a lot of investment activity. I mean, I cannot even count how many 10 million and 20 million rounds there were in space companies, but overall, we were able to track 1 billion euros of investment this year. Is this on par with what we were expecting?
It is. So a lot of what we try to do is not just put money into funds so that that money goes into space, but to put it into funds in a way that draws in additional private capital. So the EIF has a reputation for being somewhat tough on its due diligence and somewhat tough on its follow-up. That reputation, although it probably causes a certain amount of pain to the funds involved, comes with a reputational effect that means that other investors are often willing to follow. So we tend to drag in a lot of additional investment from other private investors into the funds that we support, and we call this the multiplier effect. We very much try to maximize this in order to create a lot more movement towards the areas of policy priorities like space than the basic amount of money that we have would imply. So we do expect a multiple of the amount of money that we invest to be dragged into the sectors that we choose to support.
Yeah, so some of the funds are totally focused on space or a combination of space and defense, and some of them have a multi-focus. How do you assess the sort of risk balancing in the portfolio of the investment teams?
So in terms of portfolio returns, we always make sure that we're aligned with other limited partners who are private. So the fund will try to generate a profit, obviously, because that's how the fund general partners are incentivized, and that's what the other limited partners want. In terms of the focus on the spaces, on the sectors that we care about, when we invest a certain amount of money, let's take a hypothetical example, a 100 million fund, and we're investing a 20 million ticket. First, we want to be one of the first investors so that there's a chance for the fund to use the EIF sort of logo and reputation to help bring in other investors. But secondly, we will put down a condition that says twice the amount of money that we have invested in your fund must be invested in companies that meet the criteria that we've agreed on, in this case, space tech. And then obviously, because we're European money supporting European funds, there will be other conditions such as 2/3 of the fund must be invested in Europe and so on and so forth. So we have conditions that say, here's the minimum you must do. We have exclusions that say you may not do these things if you've taken our money, things like gambling and so on. But ultimately, we try to create those conditions without breaking the limited partnership conditions, which are, it's not our money, our investment decisions. We've delegated that to an expert team. So inside the constraints that we've set, the fund must then use its best judgment to make the investments that make the most sense to them, and that's how we align the policy priority with the expertise of the fund.
Yeah, indeed. So the previous session mentioned growth investment or the lack of growth investment in Europe. So I'd like to come back to that a little bit later. So why don't we look at how is this capital actually invested into the companies? What is the craft of doing that? So would you like to ask a few questions, Gianluigi, on this?
Yes, I mean, first of all, maybe I would like to bring Estelle on the OTB on the table. It's also, I mean, you are part of one of this very capable team that Nicolas mentioned. What are the key elements that you assess in a company? What are the key elements to assess the business plan, and which are the sectors that you recommend that you are focusing more?
Yeah, so just maybe as a recap, so OTB is a venture capital firm. We focus on Series A rounds. So generally, when we invest, company already have some sort of technological developments, early commercial traction. So it's not like first rounds, but they already start to have some revenues, and we can invest up to 7 million in the rounds. So that's quite significant, and then we do follow-ons. The fund we're deploying is 180 million in size. It's a second vintage, and we've obviously focused a lot on space and deep tech, but I would say deep tech in general, and I think that's important because space is part of all of that, so I mean, it shouldn't be alienated on the side. So ultimately, when we look at the companies in which we want to invest, we have expectations that are a bit higher than seed stage funds or funds that invest in the first rounds, because they generally look at teams only, while we're going to look a bit deeper. So we're going to look obviously into the team, so the strengths of the team, the link with the technology that they are demonstrating, previous background, if they previously founded a company already and exited it. So that's, I guess, still number one, the team. And then second, we're going to look at the execution that has been so far since the first rounds that they've raised. So we're going to look at how much they've raised in total from the first investments into the rounds, and what they've executed with that. Execution is really key in that because it shows how well you're able to manage the cash, and especially in space and in deep tech, that's super important because you often run out of cash, and getting to those first commercial proof points are very tough. So I think going from seed to Series A and passing the bar of the Series A is super difficult, because generally in Series A you get space companies that have some sort of developments, but they don't yet have like a lot of commercial proof points, and they're a bit like in the middle. So it's hard to either like say that they're late seed or already Series A. So really execution is key as well. So 1, team, 2, execution, and 3, obviously everything linked to the technology and commercial validation. So we're going to look at potential commercial partners that they already have secured. It can be LOIs. Generally, we like to have already some proof of concepts and some early revenues. It doesn't have to be big, especially if it's a company that is developing hardware. But if it's a company that is developing software for space, then we will expect at least like 1 million or 2 of recurring revenues, and some year-on-year growth from the previous years. Yeah. So that's, yeah.
So can I interject here? Like,
of course.
So when the company shows this hockey stick curve with the revenues increasing by 10 times, what do you ask them? You know, what do you want to see in terms of activity to prove that this could actually happen?
Yeah, so I guess like the first question is how do you get to 100 million top line? And that's what every investor wants to see, like a path to a potential billion in exits. So when a company tells us that they can do like a 10x in the coming years, we have to have some sort of a very strong pipeline to back those arguments. The pipeline is generally built over like 1, 2 to 3 years. We have a strong focus on the imminent pipeline. So when we invest, we like to see what's going to happen in the coming years. And in space and deep tech, generally, like the pipeline kind of determines what's going to happen for the next year. So even in January 2025, looking at the pipeline of potential customers of a company, we can already tell like how much roughly they will make by the end of the year by knowing how much they've already signed or in which stage of the pipeline conversion they are in for the year, because the sales cycles obviously are not as fast as in like regular SaaS. It's usually much longer, so 6 to 8, 10 months.
Yeah.
And when you onboard also like commercial sales people, it takes them some time to onboard and convert their pipeline. So generally, like, I mean, we have a pretty rough idea of what's going to happen. Obviously, there's some like external events like the war or like strategic like developments that can accelerate things. We've seen it with defense because space has been a huge part of the defense ecosystem in the last years. We're investor in ISI. And obviously the war has increased a lot their commercial traction. So there can be some events like that, but generally like the pipeline kind of informs us a lot on what the company will do and how it will perform for the coming year.
Maybe Estelle,
Yeah.
one of the point that Thomas was into before was about the growth stage, and you as a a fund manager, at the end of the day, you need to select company, of course. You need to support the company, but you need also to prepare for the next phase. What is the Series B and the Series C? What is your view on that? Do we have any gap, or how do you see your portfolio company?
So I would say two things. I think the first one is that for any investor at any stage, usually we like to understand what the next round of investor is going to look for when they're going to invest. So I get often asked the question by early stage investors, okay, what are you expecting for this company at Series A? And I ask the same questions to Series B, Series C type of investors, to understand how we can best guide the companies as we help them. So since we take board seats, we like to be active, we like to support the companies, so we can help them like get onto that road. Second point I would say is that in space and deep tech, we have obviously a bit of a gap in terms of late stage investors and growth stage investors, but that gap is being filled a bit better. Like I think there's been some announcements of very large funds that have been announced recently. Jolt Capital is one. They also do deep tech. They can do space. There's a couple of others that are going to be announced. And those funds, I believe, are going to help a lot bridge the gap of those very large, like 30 to 50 million rounds that we really need to have happening in France and in the rest of Europe. The problem today is that when you get to those stage of Series B, Series C, you have companies, and especially space and deep tech, that need to raise very large rounds, so like above like 100 to 200 million in rounds. And so in order to have like those rounds being raised, you need lead investors, and the lead investors, they need to put at least 15 million in the round. Otherwise, they're going to be very weak investors on the cap table. Today, like, and in the past, it's been filled by external investors, so not necessarily European ones. We've seen a couple of companies that have managed to raise from European investors. So the exploration company, for instance, they've raised their last round with like European investors, so that was a positive sign. But we also saw other companies like Endurosat that had only raised from non-European investors for their last round. So it's really a shame to see like such great companies leave Europe and be invested by other investors.
Yeah, thank you. Can we ask Fani, Kallianou, de Jong, does EBRD have a mandate to invest in space, and what is your geographic target area?
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Just say thanks for braving the cold for us, because it's quite freezing in the Agora. And thank you to the EU and ESA for inviting me in this panel. And a great pleasure to be on this panel with key partners, I have to say. So quickly, I want the audience to wake up, maybe. Anyone has heard of EBRD before? Raise your hand. No, not you. Okay, one person. Okay, that's really bad. Okay, quick recap. European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, just to be short, as Tomas said, is a multilateral development bank. So IFI, let's say international financial institution, very much like the EIB, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, just to name a few. But we have a specific geographical coverage. So even though we are called European in the front, we're actually owned by 77 shareholders, which includes US, Japan, India, China, Norway, Egypt, Israel, shall I go on? You can imagine how the board of this investment bank goes. And of course, we have our prime mission is to support the private sector industries across all the economies where we operate. Where we operate, that's a question. We invest and provide technical assistance and policy dialogue in 40 economies. And that used to be the former USSR, so that's why we were basically created. But then we started expanding into Morocco, so Northern Africa, Mongolia, Turkey, and now we're going Sub-Saharan Africa. So when I say European Bank, people think we are the EIB, we're not. Now, back to what we agreed with Tomas and Gianluigi earlier, I agreed with both my panelists. Everything you said is very important, but in EBRD we have different teams trying to complement what you're doing. And I think for Europe and the countries where we could collaborate are 11 countries, because from the former USSR, let's say, we still operate in Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Estonia, Latvia, Slovakia, Lithuania, Hungary, Croatia. On all these countries we can still invest in. So I think there is a key area where we could potentially work with the mechanisms and financial products we do have in our repertoire, so to say. So we can operate in any economic industry or any sector and I have to make the caveat, I know it's the elephant in the room, but everybody talks about it, we cannot invest directly in military solutions. That's clear, and of course we know the partners now are talking more and more about defense, and the military industry and defense is correlated obviously with a lot of the space tech we have been discussing. And I think of course there are legitimate reasons why this is happening. But of course the EBRD can envisage dual use project, but looking at, I would say, the civil application. We've got two teams that would be more relevant for you guys, and I know some of my venture capital colleagues have talked to OTB, so hopefully we will have things to show for later. And of course, our partner in the European Investment Fund are very much aware of what we do. But we have the venture capital program where we operate, let's say, for ticket sizes, I would say between 2 million to 25 million on that area, and that's direct equity and direct products of venture capital. Okay, we have indirect as well.
Are you making the investments directly into the companies with your investment team?
Yes. So so let me go one up notch. So I did say we operate in all sectors, and one specific banking team, we call it. It's called Telecommunication, Media and Technology, and they can do direct. It can be debt, equity, guarantees. It can be any type of financial instrument. But they closely cooperate. So these guys can can invest in satellite operators, Internet of Things, data centers, and the ticket can go from 10 million to 200 million euros directly with the company, because our mission is to empower the private sector industries of the countries where we can put the money in. The 40 countries I mentioned, but for us, because it's a European conference, the 11 countries I mentioned earlier are more relevant for the CASSINI, I would say. But we do have also the venture capital program team that looks at from Series A and beyond, and they can do direct equity as well. And then we have a third area, which is looking at indirect finance. So through venture capital funds. And there we actually, I scratched the surface with my colleagues, but we do have some recent engagement on some of these funds that include Endurosat actually as well. So I would say the EBRD is totally able to do space. It's just that it's not branded on our website and everywhere, but it's compatible with our mission and our mandate. That was your first question, and that's the last thing I say. But yes, it was very compatible, and it's just about showing that growth capital, capital expenditure. We are able to use all our financial instruments that we have in our disposition to basically tailor-made, the requirements of that specific company throughout their life product, basically.
The timing is perfect because now we're seeing a lot of competent companies in Central and Eastern Europe, not least in OTB's portfolio, that arrive at the stage where they need a little bit more capital, maybe 30, 40, 50 million euros.
We're here.
Right?
Yes,
Maybe,
absolutely.
Fani, from my side, can be a little bit more concrete. What was the interest from the EBRD on? Do you have any concrete project that you have been supporting? What is your focus?
You mean in space
In space.
Now you put me on the spot, but I've been kind of, let's say, brainwashing most of my colleagues at the BRD for the last 3 years on space, because it's true, as I said, it's not literally written in our mandate, but nowadays more of the strategies, the sector strategies, especially the technology one, we made sure that it's now, I made sure now that space sector is actually in the strategy. If people know around the room, when you deal with big institutions like ours, if it's not written in the strategy, bankers would not actually do it. So, the first, I would say thing to do was to identify the areas, the SME team as well. I forgot to mention there's an SME finance and development team, which is another department of the EBRD. That's a problem you need to coordinate, and I'm doing that now, trying to coordinate around the space domain. But the truth is we also have advisory support for, startups in the space ecosystem. I mean, they're called Star Venture programs, but essentially that program provides mentorship, support to startup companies across the countries where we operate. And usually these, companies can become a client or can be a Cassini potential project. So I'm just saying that it's good to start joining the dots around the topic, which was not enhanced in that way, so we were not proactively looking for them, like our friends in EIB or other institutions that have a space advisory team. We don't have that, but I can assure you now, with my new position as a space economy lead across the bank, the good thing I have is I'm able to talk to all the different departments and try to pursue some of these potentially starting projects that could be relevant also and compatible with our mandate, but they're not proactively necessarily looking for space. But the truth is, and I'm not saying that even in Davos, some of them, mentioning space economy is a big, opportunity business-wise. It is. And I think the more we, make that, message across, I think it's also sometimes about, explaining to investors and companies, we're here and we can support you. Exactly. And you don't have to say space specifically, as Estelle said, it can be a deep tech or clean tech or agri-tech. But when you start explaining that we can support your innovation journey and we can be a secured funding, because we look at long-term visions, of course, that's what EBRD can be complementary to the others in the market, is that we provide that support and that long-term vision to accompany these companies to know that they have some stability, which I think is obviously an important factor missing these days around the world. And fundraising is obviously impacted by this uncertainty.
So that's very valuable, what you can contribute going forward. Now let's move to growth financing, and what can we do to mobilize more private growth capital? So the Commission has ensured that for the next 7-year budget, starting in 2028, we will have the possibility to support getting more private growth capital for the space sector and for the defense sector as well. So if I ask Nicolas, how do we identify fund managers that are able to raise this size of capital?
So in the EIF, these larger funds are already eligible and we have programs that support them. Under InvestEU, we're already able to support larger funds, if not the truly large scale-up funds that you were referring to a minute ago. But we do have a program that does support those called the European Tech Champions Initiative, where we're supporting funds that aim for a target size of 1 billion. And that's a project that is continuing and that we will intend to continue going forward. Under InvestEU and under the European mandates, the next MFF is being designed as we speak, the multi-annual financial framework or European budget, sorry for the jargon, and we anticipate a follow-on product from all of the products that we're currently deploying. As I pointed out earlier, the largest top-up, the largest single focused pocket of money under InvestEU was the space top-up for equity. So it is an area that we have historically, thanks to support from DG DEFIS, supported intensively. And I expect that to go forwards based on the conversations that we have today, but I can't obviously preempt the next multi-annual financial framework. Where do we find the companies was the core of your question. Where do we find the funds was the core of your question. We're extremely visible in the market. Everybody knows who we are. There is a constant pipeline of funds applying to us. So I suppose I see we're over time, so my last message would be we still have money under the current multi-annual financial framework for space funds of varying sizes, and to the extent that there are any that we can support, we invite applications, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. And yes, going forward, we will be supporting both venture capital, seed, but also private equity and growth funds that focus partially or totally on the space sector.
And by the way, do we have any capital left in the Cassini facility in the next 2 years so that we don't run completely dry?
Of all the different pockets of money that we have that are focused on various different areas, Cassini is a pocket of money where we do have capacity left. I think as most people who've ever applied to the EIF know, it takes a year to get through an application process. So sooner is better than later. But you've got my name. And if you know a fund manager or you are a fund manager and you want to apply, then I invite you to get directly in touch.
Sounds like a plan.
It's a great message to close the panel. It's a very positive one. So there are still funding available, special for fund manager to apply for this. So thank you. I think we need to close, Thomas, if you agree. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so
Nicolas,
much to the panel for your valuable insights.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.